My turn.
Okay. Sharon, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Um, it's really nice to meet you in person, I guess. And maybe do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Sharon. I've lived in Minnesota my entire life. And of course, Minnesota is known for all of its snow and cold, which it's not always that way, but a lot of times it is that way. I have two young adult sons that live with me and the man in my life. So our lives are completely crazy, helping them navigate life, helping them make decisions and come across different things. We also have one cat and two Springer Spaniels, and our Springers are 21 months old and 6 months old.
Oh, that's
So it's
pretty
almost like having two toddlers in the house again. So
young. That's so nice. Oh my gosh, I love cats and dogs and animals in general. They're a lot of energy, but I'm sure it's a lot of fun as well.
oh, it's hysterical how different their personalities even are from each other. And, it's just like our kids are different, our dogs are different. And they just bring that extra level of enjoyment and fun, like you were saying, to the whole situation. We have a family cabin up north, and we were up there this last weekend with our two sons and our stepdaughter. So it was like a full family event with them, the dogs, and everything else. And some people were like, "So, how was your weekend?" Well, it was good. All the kids were together, but there was so much going on, you couldn't even experience the whole thing because everybody is just everywhere.
Yeah, that's a lot, I can imagine.
But you make memories,
Of
and
course.
that's what it's all about.
I
So,
think that's how all the good memories happen when it's a lot of good stuff happening together.
and just to watch the dogs grow too is really fun right now.
Yeah.
So,
That's really great. So you have two wonderful sites. I think you're the only guest I've had that has two. So that's really great. Do you want to tell us a little bit about each site and what it's centered around, what topics you talk about?
sure. I'll say it started as one. I write under a pen name. So I write under the pen name of Selma P. Verde.
Okay.
And a lot of people will ask, why did you go with a pen name instead of your own name? Well, one, my last name is pretty hard to pronounce. So when you're writing for a middle grade or a young adult genre, it's kind of nice to have a name that they can remember a little bit easier.
Yes.
The other reason is when I was working a previous day job, I was afraid that my day job was going to take over my passion in so I didn't want the names to be connected. I wanted the names to be separate so the businesses could be separate.
Yeah.
So it started off as an author website with a blog,
Hmm.
and that's what selmapverde.com is. It's a author website. I'm selling books. I'm doing that side of the business. And that's how it started. I started blogging because I love to write and I love to creatively write. So it started as just daily posts about what was going on with me. And then it moved into more stuff about writing short stories and doing little episodes every week.
Hmm.
Then it started kind of morphing into what I was writing about, and that was about teen challenges. And that's what my three books are focused on, are teen challenges and the challenges that teens will face. I originally, back in the day when I started writing, I've always wanted to publish a novel. That was a dream I had since I was like 10 or 11. I always wanted to publish a novel. I didn't know what that novel was going to be. I didn't know what was going to happen, but that's always been a lifelong dream of mine. But I also then wanted to become a teacher.
Okay.
And so I was going to go to school for it. I was going to do the whole thing. I was going to sit down. I was going to sign the papers to do my master's degree. There were no teaching jobs available at that time.
Oh.
So then I did a complete about face, got into retail, got into different, retail, and I got into aviation. I got into just a whole different a whole different way.
Very different from teaching.
Exactly. But my passion to write was always there. So I would journal, I would do different things. And I was having a hard time coming up with a book subject. I was having a hard time figuring out what I wanted to write about as far as that novel, because that novel was always sitting there. You want to do this, you want to do this. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, one day I started coming up with a story about teens. And since I watched my two young adult sons grow up, I got a lot of material from the challenges that they were facing. So I started writing about peer pressure, which is what The Hard Way, the first book in the series, is about. And that book that was a 4-year project to get that book written and published. But I learned a lot through that whole process about how to self-publish a book, how to get a book edited, how to get a cover design put together. So it became a learning process as well. Book 2 in the series, Sharon's Way, is about bullying. And book 3 in the series is about teen homelessness. And that's The Streets Way, which just got released last week, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And so that brings me to what the second site is all about, which is Mentoring a Dream, which is about resources to help parents and caring adults help the teens in their lives. So there's different topics on there. There's diversity, mental health, peer pressure, and bullying. Each one of those topics also goes back to what the books are about. So there's a relationship between the two of those pieces. And there's going to be one more book in the series that is hopefully coming out in 2025. Once that's done, I want to take those books with Mentoring a Dream website and move that all forward. And having that be the mission, because I think at the end of the day, that's really what the whole mission is about helping teens, and through writing or through mentoring, which is what Mentoring a Dream is about.
That's really great. Yeah, I think that's such a wonderful goal, especially these days. I feel like teens really struggle a lot with peer pressure, body image, lots of things. So I think that's a really great thing that you're doing.
Well, and it's that connecting bringing the parents back to what the teens are going through. And
Yeah.
I mean, I got to live through some of that too with my kids, right? Where, oh golly, I remember that, going through that. Oh yeah, I remember going through that. But what they have gone through is a lot different. They have a lot more technology. They have a lot more access to different things with the internet that I never had growing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
I
kind
think
of
you're right.
reminding us as parents and caring adults, it's different for them. Realize it's different for them and kind of embrace that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you need to be more open-minded to the fact that their challenges are a lot different than what maybe even 10 years ago from now, because
Exactly.
social media has really taken over. So what people even went through 10, 20 years ago, it's completely different than what kids are going through these days. So yeah, you're absolutely right about that. So you mentioned that you wanted to be a writer really young, your dream was to publish a novel of your own, maybe multiple books of your own. So what made you get into writing? Like, what was some of your inspirations? Did you love reading? Did you have any favorite authors, something like that?
I love to read, and I still love to read. One of my favorite series growing up was the Nancy Drew Mystery Series, all the books, and I still have all the books here as well. I'm missing a couple of them, which I'm on the hunt for, so that I can complete and have all the books here. But that was one of my favorite series to write. The other thing I did is I would do daily diaries. My parents, for Christmas, would always get me a diary. And it was one of the ones with the cute little locks on the side with the keys and the whole thing, because I had a younger brother. And I didn't want my younger brother getting into my thoughts and dreams as a girl. I mean, absolutely not. So I started writing in those books, and the things started getting longer and longer and longer. Then I started writing silly stories and silly plays, which I still have copies of on 3-ring notebook paper. Stories that, I mean, you're just letting your imagination run wild. So there's things in there that probably could never realistically happen,
Yeah.
but it's how you're getting it out. That's how you're showing it.
Mhm.
And though those two things with journaling or the diary and doing these silly stories started kind of coming together into writing an actual novel or a short story or something like that. And then it morphed into putting together now 3 novels.
That's really great. Yeah. I think most writers, they are very inspired by what they read. Like we all started reading quite early. Um,
Right.
so what advice would you give up and coming writers, especially those who want to self-publish like you did? I'm also hoping to self-publish a book in June, so I would also
Oh,
benefit from this advice. And
well,
I'm really good. Thank you.
yeah, congratulations. That's awesome. Yeah. My best advice that I love to give people that are just starting to write, because a lot of people will sit down and they'll be like, I can't write. I just can't write anything. It doesn't come to me, whatever. One of the stories I tell about that is my advice, just start writing. What I have a couple of different posts in my blog about looking across the room at an object. It doesn't matter what the object is. I have an antique desk that belonged to my parents. And I looked across the room and I looked at this antique desk and I just started writing about it. As simple as it's brown. It has a chair in front of it. Now, it may sound really silly to start there, but that's where you start. And then it evolved into memories of my parents using that desk and what they used it for. And then it just, it keeps going and you just start writing about it. It starts as simple as that. It doesn't have to be complicated. Don't get caught up in punctuation when you're doing this exercise. Don't get caught up on editing. Just write. And by the time you're done, I had 5 pages of just memories about that desk.
Yeah. That's
And that's my best advice to give to anybody that wants to start writing is just start there.
I think that's excellent advice. I think they always say like the first sentence is the hardest. Once you start, it keeps coming to you, but just starting is so difficult.
And a lot of us put pressure on ourselves, right? To do it right the first
It
time.
has to be
There
perfect.
is no right. There
Yeah,
is no right and there is no right answer. Whatever you're going to write about, you're going to write about. It could be about a purple folder that's sitting on a table.
yeah,
It doesn't have to be specific and it doesn't have to be perfect.
yeah, absolutely. I think anything can be a starting point. Like, yeah, you're right. I think we put so much pressure on ourselves for the first draft to be perfect, but that's why it's just the first draft. It's just you getting your thoughts out there.
Yeah. And that's a lot of times how I write too. I don't necessarily always have an outline to write by. Sometimes it's just about 4 or 5 ideas that are sitting on some paper. And then you start kind of shuffling them around and seeing what needs to fit between them to
Mm,
make a story or to make a book.
yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of great stories just evolve from like a tiny idea you have or just something you see even maybe or experience. So that's very true.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you're very focused on teens that are struggling and how to help them, things like that. Are there any resources that you could suggest for maybe teens who are struggling or parents who have teens that are struggling?
One of the pages on Mentoring a Dream's website is a resources page.
Mm-hmm.
And it lists out different resources, websites to go to check out to gather some information. One of the things I do talk about in my blogs on Mentoring a Dream is sometimes you need to kind of gather some information before you can start talking to your teen about anything. You show up into that conversation not knowing anything, they just kind of blow you off and go, okay, whatever, I'm not listening. The other, and so what we do on that website is just offer some tidbits of information. The blog offers some tidbits of information to kind of take with you, also to give you some ideas on how to approach them, questions to ask, things to just kind of start a conversation, not even about the topic itself, but what's your favorite coffee from Starbucks? You know,
Yeah.
what do you guys get for pizza when you go to the pizza place? It doesn't have to be, we don't have to start talking about the issue right away. it can just start the conversation, start creating a safe place for teens to come and talk to you about things. So the resources are listed on the website. They're also, as you read through the blogs, they talk about different things in those as well.
I'll try and link those. I'm going to link those on YouTube and the blog or
Okay.
and wherever you're listening or watching this. So in case anyone's interested, they can check out those resources because I think they'll be very helpful to parents and teens. Yeah. So the next question is, you also talk about addiction, with teens. So if someone is struggling with addiction and is trying to change their life, what advice would you give them? What steps would you recommend they start with?
Yes. For teen homelessness and addiction is the other topic that I do cover on the website as well. There are resources listed on that resource page, but also it's reach out for help.
Yeah.
That's where it starts. That's what has to happen. Recognize that you have a problem and then reach out for help. Um, with addiction, addiction's hard. Addiction's hard to overcome. It's something that a lot of people really can't necessarily help you. If you're the one that's addicted, you really can't have people outside help you necessarily. You have to be ready to take that on. And it's a big deal. It's important. It's very important for you to do, but it's also something that you're going to have to do on your own. No one can do it for you.
Yeah.
Um, it's a very personal decision. It's a very heartfelt decision. And again, it's not an easy road to take, but the first step is to realize that you have an issue with it and reach out to somebody for help.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I think from what I've read about addiction, I think the first step, like, is really to accept that you have a problem and that you need help. Like, because if you can't accept it yourself, there's not really much anyone can do to help you. Yeah. So,
And find those people in those places that can help you,
yeah.
because it's not necessarily something that just anybody can help you with.
Hmm. Yeah.
There's professionals out there, there's also support groups out there that they've been through it. So they know what you're going through. Not everybody knows what you're going through. And us as parents and caring adults need to direct them towards those resources because those are the ones that are really going to help them succeed. We as parents and adults aren't necessarily the best ones to help them either.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's also just easier to talk to someone who either is a professional or has been through something similar. Because even if you think about, like, you don't tell your parents everything. Like, you're gonna have like some hesitation. Whereas, like, if you're
Yep.
with a professional, it's just so much easier to talk to them because, at the end of the day, you leave the office, that's it. You're not gonna like be seeing them on a daily basis or something like that. So you're absolutely right. I think if someone is looking for help, it's best to go to a professional or to these kind of groups where they support one another. They know what to do.
Yeah, and like you said, you don't tell your parents everything.
Yeah.
You are not necessarily feel comfortable enough to tell your parents everything. Sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger.
Yeah.
And so some of these resources that you'll see on Mentoring a Dream are hotlines where you're talking to somebody that's been through it and also somebody that, you know what, doesn't really even know you,
Yeah.
which sometimes helps as well because you want to talk to somebody, but you don't want to talk to somebody that may know you.
Mm.
So it helps you keep your anonymity a
Mm.
little bit too, to help you come to a good place to be able to say, I have a problem and I need help.
Yeah, I think that's really great. I think, yeah, for sure. Like, you have boundaries with your parents, your friends. It's hard to completely open. Sometimes you want to do it anonymously to someone who doesn't know you at all, or, just someone's a professional that is going to keep that information confidential. So definitely, I agree with that. And if anyone is looking for help, like I said, your resources page, I'll link it. So if anyone's interested, they can check that out themselves as well. I'm sure it has lots of great resources.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna move on to some more fun questions. Just to
Okay.
interview a bit light now. Um,
Lighten it up a little bit.
yeah, lighten it up. Um, so the first fun question is if you could be any age for the rest of your life, which would you choose?
We were just having this conversation not too long ago here around the house because we talk about birthdays. And of course, as we get older, sometimes you pick an age that you want to be versus the age that you really are because it brings back some good memories about where you were at that time. I would say I would like to be, my favorite age was really in my 30s, I think, to
Mm-hmm.
when I'm just out of college. You're basically kind of getting yourself set up, you're getting yourself away from your parents, you're making your world, and you're not just starting, you're in it a little bit farther than where you were when you started. And you're learning a lot because when you come out of college, you don't necessarily know as much as you think you know.
Yeah.
Real life, having the job, having to do budgets, looking for whether you're going to live in an apartment or in a flat, whether you're going to buy, whether you're going to rent. All those things start happening at that time, but it's a fun time because you get to kind of decide what direction you're going now with a lot more opening than waiting on your college degree or waiting to get to college.
Yeah, I think that's a great age to choose, like in your once you're done with college. You really don't know anything once you get out of college. You're very confused. I had that experience too. I think at the same time, it's the first time you realistically start moving towards your goals, which is so fun and exciting
Mm-hmm.
to do. So I think that's a great time to pick.
Yep.
Okay, the second one. What would a perfect day in your life look like?
A perfect day in my world would look like getting up before the rest of my family does, having the house completely quiet, being able to either make a coffee or a chai tea latte, depending on the day, and curling up, or either curling up by the fire if it's winter up here, or being out on my three season porch, reading a book and starting my day with just a very calm start to the day, and then meeting a friend for lunch, and then working on some writing in the afternoon, having dinner with my family, and having it be very low key, very simple, and just kind of be able to just take that deep breath and just relax.
That sounds so calming and like I was like that sounds perfect actually.
I would love it. I think I might have had 2 days like that in my entire life, but you need those days too, just to kind of refresh,
Yeah.
just
But
kind of come
I
back.
think those days like just keep you sane and able to get through all the other crazy chaotic days.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, the next one. So what is one of your biggest pet peeves or something that you just find so annoying?
Oh boy, annoying. Um, I guess when you're trying to give somebody advice and they just won't listen, they're not hearing you, they're not wanting to accept it. And again, everybody leads their own life, everybody does their own thing. One of the things I came to a point with my young adult sons where I said, you're an adult, you can make those decisions. However, I want to give you a little bit of advice to go with it because you end up kind of backing off of something that really upsets you and kind of say, all right, here's how I can do it. Still say what I want to say. You may not listen, you may not. That's a level of acceptance I've had to come to over the course of my life. But it's just the whole thing of, don't, if you're not going to listen, that's fine. But then don't come back to me and ask me for something later when you didn't listen to me in the first place.
Yeah, I get that. And I think I would add to that would be like when you try to give someone advice and they just get very defensive about it and take it personally instead of like realizing that you're trying to do something good for them. Like I think that would be like also that would go hand in hand with the one you said.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I'd have to agree with that because it's like, all I'm trying to do, just hear me out.
exactly.
Just hear me out. You don't have to do anything that I'm telling you.
Yeah,
And like I've said to my young adult sons a couple of times too, it's like, I'm going to probably tell you something you don't want to hear, but you know what? You're going to hear it.
yeah,
Whether you do anything with it, I can't do anything with that, but I need to say it.
yeah.
So at least it's out there.
Yeah, exactly. You put it out there, you've made your peace, like, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so the last fun question. Are you more of a morning person or a night owl? Although from your answer, it seems like you're more of a morning person.
I am more of a morning person for sure. One of the things, I mean, I've always been that person that gets up at like 7 in the morning. However, I've been getting up earlier, probably in the last 5 to 6 years of my life, to experience that quiet in the morning. That's when I get a lot of my work done.
Yeah,
That's when now our dogs get up at like 5:30. So it works well into my schedule, but it doesn't because now it takes away some of that quiet time that I just enjoy, just to have the peace and quiet before everything starts.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely more of a morning person than an evening person for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think that that's very fair. Like it's nice to just have like some time before everything starts, like just some quiet me time. But I think like a lot of people are night owls for the same reason because everyone's asleep, so you kind of have your own time and you just have like the peace and quiet to do whatever you want to do, whatever you're, trying to accomplish. It's just so much easier.
Well, and I will say my young adult sons spend a lot of time on the back side of the clock. So in my house, it would be a little louder during that time than
Oh,
it would be
yeah.
in the morning.
That's fair, yeah.
I
Okay,
mean,
that
I love
that
that thought.
totally makes sense. You're a morning person.
Well, again, they're working jobs that start at 2 in the afternoon.
Oh,
So they're playing that side of the clock versus I'm playing the other side. So
yeah.
I'm sleeping when they're awake.
There,
They're
yeah.
awake when I'm sleeping. Yeah.
So yeah, that's great. But yeah, at least you guys get your own me time on either spectrums, you know?
Yeah, you gave me something to think about because that's night owls just have their quiet time at a different time.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're all looking for the same thing. It's just we're finding it at different times of our day.
I think you're absolutely right.
So I think this is pretty much it for the interview. I just wanted to ask if you want to add anything or say anything to my readers and listeners. If if there's anything you want to mention, I will add links to your books, the resources, your sites, everything. If there's
Okay.
anything else you want to add.
Well, I'll just make a statement about my third book that just came out last week.
Yes.
It's called The Streets Way, and it's about teen homelessness and addiction. And it kind of continues the story from the first two books, but they're all standalone, so you can read them separately. They don't have to be read together. I'm pretty excited about that book because that book took a journey that I didn't think it was going to take to get published. We had some life things that got in the way and some other things to timeline. But one of the best things that kind of came out of that was it published when it should have published at the end of it. When you're hot in the middle of it, it doesn't seem like it,
Yeah.
but it published when it should have published. The process was what the process should have been, but it felt so good to publish that one specifically, only because it had been through such a tough journey to get there. So
Yeah, I think the more struggles you have, like the more satisfying it is when you finally get to your goal. But I'm so glad you're able to publish it on time and get it out there. That's really great. I was actually just talking to my publishing manager, and she was telling me it's never a smooth ride because
No.
having an issue too. And she was like, yeah, she was like, it's never a smooth ride. Like you should expect at least a couple of things getting in the way. So yeah.
And that's one of the things, it's life happens.
Exactly. Life happens. Yeah. I think it happens to all
And
of us. Yeah.
and at the end of the day, it will happen.
Hmm.
It's just a matter of remembering it may not line up the way you think it's going to, and be willing to be flexible. And life runs that same way. Be
Hmm.
willing to be flexible, be willing to kind of roll with it sometimes. And you'll be pleasantly surprised how things do turn out, because
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah. That's really great. And I think that's the perfect way to end this interview.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you once more for being here. If anyone's interested in her blog or her either of her sites and her resources, her books, everything will be linked below. Do check it out. I would recommend you do. Even if you're not like thinking of purchasing the books, just check them out. You might end up changing your mind. You never know. So yeah, I think we'll end it here.
Okay, thanks.